What happens when Naruto is banished to the unknown lands to the west of Konoha, where he forges a new path for himself, a path that will make him new friends, more enemies, and a new destiny. No time skips. AU, Post-Sasuke Retrieval Arc. Hey guys, it's me, Amaterasu, back with a whole nother What If series. What if Naruto created his own village? I will link the story down in the description, but without further ado, roll the intro.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
My wheels got in my bag and I got all my feels. I'm getting this paper, I'm stacking a meal. I'm with your hoe in the house on the hills. Yeah. I'ma keep it real, had to sacrifice to try to get my bands up. Shorty wanna fuck with me, she see me on the camera. She said she in love with me, but really I can't stand her. She just want part of this life cause she see me on the ground.
Chapter 1. Banished. Naruto sat down hard on the grass, feeling the soft wind blow through his hair. It's not fair. How could they do this to me? He asked himself. He checked the bandage on the wound on his leg. The villagers and quite a few nins had felt the need to drive home the point that he was no longer wanted in the village. He tilted his head back to reveal a dirt-stained face with tears streaking down his cheeks. One word echoed in his head over and over again. Banished. Naruto had awoken in the hospital a few days after failing to retrieve Sasuke. He had expected disappointment, but he had really tried his best. Even Sakura had forgiven him, had told him they'd get stronger together. But the village council was not as forgiving. They had held a closed-door meeting with the head of various clans and had come to the conclusion that Naruto was just too dangerous. The first sentence passed on him apparently was death. Naruto smiled faintly at that, because Obasan had taken one village elder and punched him through a wall and told them to pick again. She had been fired as Hokage of course, but she point-blank told them that no one was going to kill Naruto. Jiraiya and Gamabunta had appeared as well and backed up that claim. Two of the Sannin staring them down had forced the council to alleviate the sentence passed, but would not convince them to back down completely. Don't worry Naruto, you and I shall see the world together and conduct research for my books. I have a great idea for the next one. Jiraiya had smiled when he told Naruto in his hospital bed. But Naruto could feel the desperation in his voice to make it seem not so bad. His dreams had been crushed. There was no way he would be Hokage now. He would never make Chunin or Jounin. He was no longer a Konoha nin. Period. Tsunade herself had hugged him quietly, played with his hair and told him he'd be safe with Jiraiya. She cried quietly for his lost dreams. Sakura stood shocked in the corner and said nothing. Her heart broken completely, tears pouring down her face. Her team was completely dissolved now. Her best friends, one run away, one forced away. Naruto could not stand it. Early the next morning, he had heard the footsteps in his room, knew someone had come to kill him. He seriously considered letting them do it, but instinct took over and he rolled to the side to avoid a kunai being stabbed into the hospital cot. Several voices of alarm were raised as Naruto dashed out the window to safety. Several weapons were thrown at him, none hit. A particularly well-aimed kunai though pierced his thigh. Glancing down, Naruto could have sworn the person who threw it was one of his teachers from back at the academy. He had no time to wait for Jiraiya, who was still sleeping off the previous night's activities. Naruto Uzumaki left Konoha with nothing except the hospital gown he was wearing. With a sigh, Naruto wiped the tears from his eyes and stood up. He tugged at the civilian clothes he had stolen off a clothesline at a farmhouse not far from Konoha. He glanced back in the direction of Konoha. He supposed eventually Jiraiya would catch up to him. But Naruto had no idea when that would be, and it was far more likely that some other Konoha nin would find him first. Naruto was not the smartest ninja around, but he was no fool. Waiting was not an option. Naruto headed into the wilderness, putting one foot in front of the other and did not look back again. Naruto was lost, he knew that. Clearly there were no people around for miles. A large series of mountains stared back at him. 2 months had passed since he left Konoha. He had not met a single Konoha nin since leaving. Naruto had long since stopped crying. Jiraiya had not found him either, but Naruto did not blame the Urosenin. He had been keeping away from villages and people, staying in the wilderness. He had found a few things to help him. Once he had come across a slaughtered caravan of merchants. Bandits had probably done it, but they had overlooked a few things. Naruto found some decent fitting clothes, even if they were white and not orange like he preferred. White boots, white pants, white t-shirt and a white coat. Naruto thought he looked like a ghost, but shrugged. It fit and it kept him warm. He had also found a few kunai. By found of course, He meant embedded in the dead bodies of the caravan merchants. After cleaning them, he had put them in a satchel he had recovered from an overturned cart. Living off roots, berries and captured live animals was easy enough for a trained ninja. But Naruto had no real purpose. He had kept walking in a straight line, never wavering. And now here he was, staring at this mountain range in his way. I wouldn't go up there if I was you. Hey Naruto spun around at the raspy voice. A decrepit-looking old man smiled back at him. People die in those mountains. That's the pathway to heaven and hell, kid. Don't you know that? No one goes there. And quote. The old man, clearly a hunter, put down his catch of 3 rabbits and sat. He sighed and pulled out some sticks and began to build a fire. Naruto's hand still grasped the kunai behind his back warily. This was the first person to talk to him in 2 months. It felt odd and dangerous. Hungry, kid? Eat with me. It gets awful lonely out here if you stay long enough. And quote. The man invited him. Naruto eyed him warily but sat, hand still holding the kunai. Ah, a kunai? Nice. So you're a ninja? Kinda far from home, aren't you? We're in the middle of nowhere. That's exactly where I want to be. And quote. Naruto said calmly. He didn't think the man meant him no harm. He clearly had no idea who Naruto was. Where you from, kid? The trapper asked as the fire roared to life. He didn't even look at Naruto as he arranged 2 rabbits over the fire to roast. Naruto thought about lying, but saw no real point to it. Konoha, wow. That's a hell of a long way from here, kid. You trying to circle the world? The man seemed to laugh at his own joke and leaned back on his backpack. His eyes locked on Naruto's for a brief second with an intensity that hadn't been there before. We're all running from something, kid. I don't care what your reason is, but going into those mountains is suicide. Most people who have even heard of it are deathly afraid of them. Why? Naruto asked, intrigued by the old man's tone of voice. The old man chuckled. They're called the pathways to heaven and hell. You're at what many people call the edge of the world. On the other side of the mountains is a limitless ocean. But these mountains? Oh, they're a nasty piece of work. And quote. The man poked the rabbits, turning them to cook on the other side. Legend says that travelers who go in these mountains are either sucked into the depths of hell, or pulled into the waiting arms of heaven. Either way, none have ever gone in and come out. And quote. The old man laughed aloud. None but me, that is. Ha ha ha. Naruto stared at the old man. He was clearly a bit on the crazy side. So how did you escape? The old man smiled at Naruto. Well, you're the first person I've met in over 10 years out here. I'll tell you because this secret is too good not to be passed down. And quote. He chuckled softly. I used to teach at a school in a faraway land before the wanderlust took me. I wanted to see the world. I'd traveled for 20 years before I saw these mountains. My insatiable curiosity drove me to enter them. Suddenly the ground beneath me gave way. I managed to grasp onto the ledge of the cave I was about to fall into. The light that shone in showed me nothing but blackness. I pulled myself out and watched as the ground shook and the hole sealed shut. Naruto stared wide-eyed at the man. Was it a doorway to hell? Ha ha ha. The man laughed, then coughed. No, it was an underground cave that was exposed due to shifting tectonic plates. This edge of the world is a huge fault line. That sort of thing is very common. Oh, Naruto drooped his shoulders disappointedly. But what about the other part? Pathway to heaven? Ah, well, after that I decided to be more careful of my movements. I took my time and climbed the mountain. I discovered something truly amazing. The path to the island in the sky. And quote. The old man erupted into bales of insane laughter. Naruto stared at him. Yup, crazy. The old man wiped away tears from his eyes. No, really. I stepped into a narrow gully and an incredible river of wind grabbed me. All of the world's wind starts from somewhere and goes to somewhere. That's the rules of nature. But I was unprepared. This here, the edge of the world, is where the wind goes. Ha ha. It picked me up, picked up a few boulders too, and threw me up this gully. It was like a barrel of a gun. I was shot into the evening sky right into some clouds. Naruto stood up angrily and pointed at him. You're lying, old man. No one could live through that. I am not. I was blasted through a cloud. And what did I find? I didn't come crashing back down to earth. Oh no. I was on an island in the sky. The density of these clouds is such that it is solid like land. The results of millions of years of wind and debris being flung into the atmosphere. There is dirt, boulders, even trees up there. You don't believe me? Go see for yourself. You're lying. How could that be? And how did you get back down? Naruto exclaimed in disbelief. Ha! I was trapped up there for months before I found it. If there is an updraft, there has to be a downdraft too. Imagine a river of wind that is constantly flowing down. This one is much gentler, thankfully. It was like sliding down. I landed not far from where I went up. Naruto scowled at the crazy old man. Even if I believe this, how did you survive up there that long? Kid, you're really starting to bug me. I told you it's always flowing. There are birds, animals that clearly had been thrown up there too. Some really rare ones too. There's water from rain that is collected into a small lake. There are clouds higher than that one. It's just like normal land, except it's an island in the sky. Naruto sat back down and studied the old trapper. The trapper handed Naruto a now cooked rabbit and took one for himself. My name is Livingston by the way. Naruto bit hungrily into the rabbit. I'm Naruto. Can you show me how to get to this island? Livingston chewed and laughed heartily. Kid, I'm old now. If I tried to make it back home I'd die before I got there. I sense my time is close. I'm an explorer. But what good's an explorer if no one ever knew you were here, if you even existed. And quat. The old trapper cried. Showing you will validate my existence, kid. I'll take you tomorrow. Naruto nodded. He understood Livingston very well. There it is. Kid Livingston had barely made it up the hill they needed to climb to get to the wind channel he described. He was indeed very old, and feeble. Truthfully, he needed Naruto to help him get even this far. With Naruto's help, it had taken them the better part of the day. Naruto looked around. This was a very hard place to find. The rocks were jagged and the terrain unforgiving. No one would willingly come along this path. It looked like it led nowhere. Naruto could see it. Somehow he could feel the wind in this place, the extreme power it held. He wondered absently if he could ever match the power of such wind force. What do we do now? Naruto asked Livingston. Livingston laughed maniacally and for a feeble old man seemed to have gained a sudden burst of energy. Jump in the river, fool. With one last laugh, Livingston jumped into the gully and Naruto stared amazed as an unseen force lifted him and rocketed him through the gully, and up into the clouds covering the mountain ahead. Naruto shrugged and adjusted the strap on his satchel. He jumped in and felt the cushion of air as it caught him. It wasn't sudden. His fall slowed down and then gradually he was pushed then rocketed towards the sky. He felt an exhilarating rush as the mountain sped past him. He saw in the wind river a couple rabbits had been caught and were spinning around madly. The sky loomed before him and he was shot up into the clouds, riding the river of air. The river punched through the clouds and Naruto ended up on his backside sitting on a hard piece of cloud. Gotta work on that landing, kid. And quat. Livingston laughed at Naruto. Naruto stood up and looked amazed at his surroundings. They were standing on what had to be a large mass of clouds. It was white and seemed to be in the general cloud shape. But it was definitely solid ground. Naruto saw that Livingston was standing on what could only be described as a beach. Sand formed a ring around an actual island of dirt, trees, grass. It looked like perfectly normal land, except for the clouds that it was perched on. Naruto grinned and laughed. This was too amazing to be true. Livingston smiled at him and pointed to the sun. See over there, kid? By that oak tree? That's the point where you go down. I found a few other wind rivers but they seem to go off into the distance around the world. I think this is the center of all wind in the world, kid. Where everything comes and goes. Livingston fell to his knees and clutched his chest. Where all things come at the end of things. Naruto leapt over to the old man and caught him before he fell backwards. I'm so glad fate had us meet, Naruto. I did not have the strength to come back to my beloved Sky Island myself. And I want to be buried here. My life was not always a pure one, but I want to be buried here, as close to heaven as I could possibly get. And quat. Livingston coughed and smiled at Naruto. Naruto had no idea what to do. He wasn't a med nin. He just held on to Livingston while he breathed his last. The sunset from heaven is like nowhere else, kid. Don't miss it, okay? Naruto nodded and shed tears for the first person to show him kindness in months. He sat there, holding the slowly breathing Livingston until the sun set and his chest stopped moving. Naruto stood back from the marker he had just placed on the grave of Livingston and hoped it would be good enough. He had used his kunai to carve his name in a piece of wood he had found. Livingston, discoverer of heaven. Naruto sighed and turned back to the desolate island. His mind raced. I have nowhere to go, no one to go to, nothing to guide my life. But I have a place where no one can ever find me. He stared at the sky, which really seemed much closer now, and wondered what his next step would be. A steady stream of rain began to beat down on him. I guess I can't sleep outside forever. I should probably build a shelter. Can't be living in Tengoku heaven and not have somewhere dry to sleep. Naruto stopped in his tracks. Tengoku, that's a good name for this place. With a shrug, Naruto set about making himself more comfortable in his new home. After a week in his new home, Naruto decided the place he built was as best as he could do with his limited skills. There were a lot more animals than he could have thought possible trapped on this sky island, so he had no trouble for food. Naruto did his best to map out the island in his head in that time. It was large, mostly even terrain. It did indeed look as though it had been here since the dawn of time. Naruto had also found many items that had been blown up by the wind. Things seemed to collect where the wind died down, on a small hill towards the center of the island. He had found several scrolls of a mostly useless nature, shoes, clothes, a wig, a few weapons he recognized like kunai and swords, and a few he didn't. Naruto even found money among the items. He smiled at his good fortune but realized he had nowhere to spend it, even if he wanted to. Naruto frowned. He didn't want to spend his whole life as a hermit. He needed a plan. He fiddled with the weapons he had found for himself while he looked across the island. Well, I'm a banished ninja. Maybe I can earn money doing ninja stuff? That's what Konoha does after all. He thought to himself. The question is, how do I start? Naruto had no idea how to proceed. But he did know one thing. Now he had a home to come back to, so things didn't seem so hopeless anymore. He would need to leave Tengoku for a while, but he'd come back for sure. Besides, he couldn't find any ramen in the wind heap. The following morning, Naruto packed up his satchel with kunai and food, and headed out. He saw the tree that Livingston had pointed out and felt the air current swirling around it. Naruto stepped into the stream and felt himself pulled down into the wind river. He felt the experience of flying down from the clouds, his body completely weightless as the wind rushed him at an angle to the ground. Naruto almost panicked at the speed that he was going, but the wind curved until he was running almost parallel with the ground. Just 100 feet in the air, Naruto felt his feet brush the treetops and his heart raced with the exhilaration. The wind slowed down gradually and he managed to jump out of the stream and land smoothly in a clearing. He grinned widely as he looked back where he came from. The cloud with Tengoku was so high up, and looked like any other cloud, completely hidden from the world. Naruto set out to make a life for himself, knowing he had a home to come back to. 3 days east of Tengoku, Naruto was walking across a vast savanna of low-lying grass, when he saw something in the distance. As he walked closer, it looked like a giant birdcage with a vulture in it. The closer he got to it, the more like a person the bird in it resembled. It was a man. Naruto came close to the cage after looking around to make sure no one was in the area. His ninja senses could detect no one. He peered into the cage. The man looked half dead. His face cracked and dry, his eyes closed. His black mane of hair was long and disheveled. He had on black clothes that had long been covered in dirt and grime. A trail of dried blood went down one arm. With a start, the man's eyes opened and he yawned. He glanced at Naruto. Came to finish me off, did you? I told your boss already that I will not tell him where the treasure I stole is, so he may as well give it up. I'll haunt him and kill him as a ghost, so do your worst. Naruto was too stunned to speak. He just took a step back. Well, come on, aren't you going to? The man looked at Naruto properly and then stood up in the cage, his hands gripping the bars. You're not one of Lecture's men, are you? He sounded almost pleading. No. And quat. Naruto replied. But maybe I should get going. And quat. Naruto didn't want to get caught up with a thief. He turned his back to go, but the man called out to him. Wait, set me free, kid. I'm an innocent man wrongly being punished for a crime I didn't commit. The man said boldly. You just said you stole some treasure. And quat. Naruto replied dryly. Well, yes, but that's not a crime if the initial treasure was stolen to begin with, is it? The man grinned. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Senjii Mikado, the greatest swordsman in the world. Naruto stared at him dumbfounded. What a statement to make. The man nodded towards a nearby tree. See my sword over there? The bastards couldn't even be bothered to take it. Make sure it's well kept. Just left it out here to rust. They also left you here to die, you know. And quat. Naruto stated incredulously. The man seemed more upset about his sword. I'd have gotten out, but it rained 3 nights ago and the sword need to be wiped down. This is an original Hattori Hanzo sword. It would dishonor me greatly if it were allowed to rust. Naruto nodded. He understood now. You're mad, aren't you? And quat. He turned to walk away. No, wait, kid. Wait, you appear before me, dressed all in white like an angel sent to save me. It must mean something. I truly am the greatest swordsman you will ever meet. If you do me this favor, I shall owe you my life. I will forever swear my sword is yours. And quat. Senjii looked at Naruto and grinned widely and innocently. Naruto frowned. The man could be a liar and a thief. But Naruto couldn't just leave him here to die. Could he? As he thought about it, he heard the faint sound of hooves in the distance. Senjii heard it too. They're coming back to finish me off, kid. Thanks, but you better get out of here for your own safety. And quat. Naruto was stunned at the difference in the man's voice and attitude. His voice had become steely and serious. Naruto's mind was made up in that instant and he started to form a Rasengan, his shadow clone appearing next to him to help him complete it. A ninja. And quat. Senjii said as he stepped away from the lock. Naruto slammed the Rasengan into the lock and it blew apart. Senjii stepped out and fell shakily to his knees. If you're a ninja, paying back my life debt just got a hell of a lot more dangerous. And quat. He pushed himself to his feet and glared at the approaching horseman. Excellent, I hate when life gets boring. Do me a favor and let me deal with these guys? I owe them a lil something. Senjii lunged for his swords as an arrow whizzed by his head. The horsemen were upon them and Naruto leapt away from the fight. He looked on from a nearby tree as Senjii engaged the 6 riders. Senjii grasped his sword and with a flick or his wrist sent the scabbard flying off the sword and towards the first rider. The point of it was clearly sharpened because it went through the man like a spear. 5 riders and 1 riderless horse now bore down on him. He rolled to the side and parried a swing from one of the riders. With a sudden twirl, his body pivoted in mid-air. His sword was a blue blur as it sliced the air. Almost faster than Naruto could follow, Senji planted his foot on the ground and sprung back into the middle of his attackers. To them it probably did seem like he disappeared. In an instant Senji stood with his back to the riders, his scabbard back in his hands. He slowly slid his sword into it. As if on cue, the riders fell from their horses, spurts of blood spraying upwards. Naruto was actually impressed. The man was not just full of talk. He was indeed a good swordsman, at least the best he'd ever seen. And quat. Senji sighed. That felt good. Payback you punks. And quat. He looked around for Naruto. Hey kid, you got any sake? I haven't had anything to eat or drink in a week. And quat. Senji grinned widely and Naruto smiled back. Senji then promptly fell to his knees and collapsed in the dirt. Chapter 2, First Steps. Naruto prodded the fire with the stick in his hand. The distant howl of a coyote the only other sound other than the crackling of the small campfire. He glanced across at the prone body of Senji, the swordsman he had set free yesterday. The man's face looked peaceful as he rolled in his sleep, both hands clutching his sheathed sword to his chest. Naruto frowned. Yesterday he would have hazarded a guess that Senji was an older man, but his face had seemed to drop years of worry when he got his sword back. He looked to be no older than 20, 25 maybe. A young swordsman with a very high level of skill, Naruto thought. And quat. Senji stretched out with a groan. That was a good nap. And quat. He glanced over at Naruto, his black eyes boring into Naruto's steel blue. So what's your name, my lord? Senji asked with a grin. Naruto's mouth dropped open. Wah, what? Well, I owe you my life, so my life is now yours. And quat. Senji smiled as he sat up and rubbed behind his head. His eyes closed as he chuckled. It's my honor at stake, you understand. Naruto blinked 3 times then shrugged. I'm Naruto, Uzumaki Naruto. Well then, my lord Naruto. And quat. Kenji stared at Naruto intently. Where are we going and what's the plan? Naruto looked back at Senji and grinned. He had been thinking about it ever since leaving his new home. Naruto had grown up alone and didn't want to spend his entire life that way. It was time to make a start. Well, I'm starting my own village. I plan to get jobs a ninja would get, and get the money I need to build my village. Senji stared at Naruto with his mouth open for a full minute. You're serious, aren't you, my lord? Naruto grinned nervously. I know it's a lot to do, but I think if we took it one step at a time we can do it. I never give up. That is my ninja way. Senji stood up and paced, pausing to glance at Naruto every now and then. Naruto seemed almost oblivious to this as he went about cooking dinner. Fate has certainly led me to an interesting companion. And quat. Senji muttered. My lord. And quat. He began. Naruto cut him off. Please, call me Naruto? That my lord stuff just sounds weird. And quat. He made a face and went back to the task at hand. Okay. Senji sat back down with a thump. Your goals are amazing and worthy. I will dedicate myself to helping you achieve them. Naruto looked up and grinned. Thanks Senji. Senji smiled back. So where are we going to build this village? 5 minutes later Kenji come back. It's all true, I swear it. And quat. Naruto shouted at the angrily storming off samurai. Senji stalked into the forest, looking to sit alone and quietly for a while. My new lord is a madman. What a cruel fate to befall me, the best swordsman in the world. Konoha Lee stood looking at the rising sun. For weeks now he had stared off in that direction, the direction his friend Naruto had been driven off into. No one had seen or heard from him since. Lee had tried talking to Sakura about it. Where would Naruto have gone? But she could barely form words to speak. She had cried for several days. Lee himself had cried, sorrowful tears of youth. He insisted. Such cruelty at the hands of the villagers they were sworn to protect. Lee could not understand it, could not believe it. Of course, the retribution of Naruto's friends had been swift. Tsunade had sent Hyuga to the hospital with a broken skull, ribs and spine. It was doubtful any of the medical ninja there could heal him. In fact only Tsunade might have been able to, and she flat out laughed and refused. She had then teams up with Jiraiya and found every ninja and villager who had run Naruto out of Konoha and beat them all within an inch of their lives. Kakashi had run into a few who were laughing at what they did the next day, and from the stories Lee heard Kakashi's wrath was something to behold. The council had elected Danzo to be the new Hokage. Many had been disgusted with the politics, but the undercurrent of the village was that Tsunade had been too forgiving to the beast that was Naruto. Lee sighed as the sun shone glared at Konoha. It was his own imagination he was sure, but it felt like the universe was judging them, and not in their favor. Tsunade, Shizune and Jiraiya had left the village. For good it seemed. Jiraiya had spit on his hometown and vowed he would not return. He set off looking for Naruto. No one knew where Tsunade had gone. Kakashi had been reprimanded. The new Hokage had sought to flex his influence over him. Kakashi smiled, pulled out his book, and threw his Hie to the ground at his feet. He had resigned as a Konoha ninja, choosing to go live quietly in his house and read his books. Lee stretched, preparing for his 5-lap warm-up jog around Konoha. He could not sit here and do nothing. What had happened was not fair. It was not right. He would talk to Sensei about it. Naruto stared at the city sprawled before them. It had taken a few days for them to reach the city. It was at least 3 times as big as Konoha, Naruto decided, and the towers seemed to be taller than any he'd ever seen. Naruto could see some huge boats coming into dock, their sails billowing in the wind. People hustled about, oblivious to each other, focused intently on whatever purpose drove them today. Senji sighed. Welcome to Sarakiel, the city where anything can be found, bought, sold, stolen. The city of sin in the west. Naruto just nodded absently as they looked down from their vantage point on a hill on the outskirts of the city. Senji continued. If you want to earn money doing ninja jobs, this is the place to come. Lots of missing nin come here to vie for the freelance jobs that exist. But and quat. Senji paused and smiled. You need to first prove yourself to the overlords that you can handle the jobs, and would be able to get them done. Naruto turned to look at Senji. How do you go about doing that? Easy, Senji replied. You enter the kumite. You fight the best fighters from around the globe. Ninja, samurai, monks, street fighters. Everyone comes here just to prove themselves and make a name. The ones who get noticed get jobs. Simple. Naruto nodded. The first had explained to them that the Chunin exams were pretty much for the same reason. So this Naruto at least understood. Well then, I have a contest to sign up for and quat. Naruto grinned at Senji, who smiled wickedly right back. Ladies and gentlemen. The ringmaster's voice boomed into the microphone. Naruto sat in the bleachers with 100-odd other fighters. Senji himself had also signed up. Naruto had no idea the contest would be this soon, starting only the day after they arrived. But he was glad he didn't have to wait long. He tugged at his white shirt and sighed. He missed his orange. Welcome to the kumite. Drums sounded all along the grounds as 30 drummers with rope tied around their heads and drums strapped to their shirtless bodies pounded out a fast rhythm. The crowd in the stadium went wild. The kumite was big business to Sarakiel apparently. Thousands of people filled the stadium to look at the action. You all know why you're here. To see who is the best. Our reigning champ? Is he the best? Is it, Guerrera? The announcer dragged out that last name to thundering screams and applause from the crowd. A huge hulk of a man stood up from the bleachers and waved at them. His entire head was wrapped in a mask. Naruto swallowed, hard. The man's biceps were bigger than Naruto's head. He really hoped he didn't have to fight him just yet. Without further ado, our first matchup for the day is and quat. And so the matches began. Naruto looked on in amazement as the first few matches went on. These fights were not child's play. There was no referee. There was no draw, or conceding. You fought until someone was either dead or knocked out. Those were the rules. Naruto frowned at the brutality of it all, but a part of him relished the idea of beating someone to a pulp. Naruto realized he had a lot of anger pent up, and this would be the first fight he would have had since he got run out of Konoha. Next up, Naruto Uzumaki vs Paul Laureate. Naruto walked into the center of the ring and waited for his opponent to arrive. A Caucasian man who had a funny spring in his step. Fight! The announcer shouted. Naruto blocked as his opponent kicked at his head in the blink of an eye. Naruto was shocked at the man's speed. He was easily as fast as Rock Lee. Before he had time to think, Naruto was swept off his feet by a spinning ground sweep. Laureate kept the momentum of the spin and brought his other leg sweeping around to catch Naruto in mid-air. It connected with a satisfying thud, but to everyone's surprise, Naruto just vanished in a puff of smoke. From the ground Naruto launched himself at Laureate and Apos. Unfortunately for Naruto, this was no Chunin match. Laureate saw him coming and stepped back just enough to avoid the uppercut. He then spun and kicked the real Naruto flying. Naruto landed with a thump in the dust to the cheering of the crowd. Naruto recovered quickly and quickly formed the seals he needed. Cage Bunshine. With a loud puff, 100 clones covered the arena floor. Laureate looked puzzled for a second then smiled acknowledgement at Naruto. With a nod, Naruto's clones and Laureate launched at each other. What happened next was a blur of dust, blood and puffs of smoke. But in the end Naruto was down to only 12 clones, and Laureate lay unconscious in the dust. Winner, Naruto Uzumaki. The crowd cheered for Naruto. He smiled and wiped the dust from his eyes. Something about thousands of people cheering you on a few months after an entire village tried to kill you and banish you. It just seemed to soothe Naruto. Sanyu's fight was next, and it astonished Naruto how quickly it went. Sanyu had just appeared behind his opponent in a red flash. He was putting his sword away as blood spurted out of his opponent. Seriously wounded but not dead, Sanyu explained. There was no honor in killing for no reason. Naruto grinned. His new friend was a great fighter, and a decent person, something Naruto had come to value. He made a mental note to ask Sanif how he moved so fast later that night. Just as the sun was setting and Naruto was thinking all the matches for the day were done, the stadium lit up with fire from hundreds of torches. Sanif, who was sitting next to him, leaned in and explained. There is no rest, no sleep. We fight until only one is left standing. Naruto nodded. Naruto Uzumaki vs Romero Aguila. Naruto moved to the center of the ring and looked on as a man with a metal mask over the front of his face and two short swords in his hands leapt all the way from the bleachers to the center of the ring. Naruto whistled. That was a good jump. Fight. Naruto wasted no time this time around, and attacked first. He launched a series of kicks and punches that were all easily dodged by Romero. Romero shrieked like a girl and Naruto could see the two short swords swinging. They put two shallow cuts on his forearms. He drew back and contemplated his next move. Those swords would be a problem. Romero shrieked again and dove at Naruto's swords first, twisting in mid-air to simulate a corkscrew. Naruto rolled to the side and came up with two clones on either side of him. One clone rushed in to fight and distract Romero, while Naruto and his other clone formed a Rasengan. Sanif watched in fascination for the second time as Naruto created his ultimate jutsu. Once it was complete, the other clone leapt into the battle. So the clones were attacking from left and right, while Naruto lunged down the middle. The tactic partially worked. Romero took the Rasengan to high midsection and went flying backwards, but he seemed to be twisting with the movement, and ended up controlling the impact of it. Romero landed on his feet at the edge of the ring. With a shriek he jumped back in the air, high above Naruto, arcing down, his legs preparing for a final kick on Naruto. Naruto was stunned. No one had ever been able to take a Rasengan and shrug it off. He rolled to the side again and in desperation threw a brace of kunai at Romero. Romero knocked them all away, left, right, up, with his swords and kept coming after Naruto, slicing right into him. With a puff of smoke, the last visible Naruto in the ring vanished. Romero looked to the ground again, waiting for Naruto to spring out of it. His eyes darting left and right, head tilted down, he did not see the last kunai he had parried into the air come hurting back down to him. Nor did he see when it changed back into Naruto and kicked him at the base of his skull. Winner Naruto Uzumaki. Sanif smiled and shook his head sadly at the same time as Naruto, exhausted, took his seat next to him. You're very clever, Naruto. But cleverness will only get you so far. You must become stronger if you want to form your own village. Naruto's eyes glared at Sanif. He wanted to be mad, but he couldn't. He could see the logic of what he was saying. Aren't you ninjas supposed to have an affinity? I've encountered some of you before and usually you have a specialty. Fire, water, ice. I've seen many versions of this. But you've not shown anything like that. And quat. Sanif's eyes casually took in the next match while he was talking to Naruto. I don't know if I have an affinity. And quat. Naruto responded. Sensei never really spoke to us about it. And quat. Now that he thought about it, Naruto realized that Sanif was right. Sasuke had been able to use lightning jutsu, so clearly he had a lightning affinity. Naruto wondered absent-mindedly how he'd find out if he had any leanings towards a certain type. Sanif, as if reading his thoughts, muttered to him. In battle we always find new strengths. Try something new and see if it works out for you. If not, well then ... and quat. Sanif laughed a little. Then you'll just lose. Naruto stared straight ahead, ignoring the small laughter. I do not lose. Sanif had progressed again, defeating a nunchaku user in what was a surprisingly long bout. Well, long for Sanif as it took over 30 seconds. During the last hour of fighting, thought Naruto had been sitting with his eyes closed, forehead furrowed in concentration. It wasn't often that Naruto could sit quiet for so long and think. Naruto Uzumaki vs Leopard. Naruto opened his eyes and walked into the center, the night breeze blowing coolly against his skin. He looked up and saw a gust pick up leaves and sweep them around. Naruto's eyes opened wide and he looked back down to his opponent. A grin spread across his face, worth a shot right. He leapt into the ring and landed in a small puff of dust. Anticipation coursed through Naruto. He was about to try something new, and that always got his juices flowing. Leopard was a wiry man, with markings on his bronze body that resembled the great cat he was named after. His back was arched forward and his limbs looked a bit longer than they should have. Naruto's eyes assessed his opponent. Well, he does look the part. Fight! The MC commanded and stepped away. Leopard did not advance, he instead growled quietly and walked sideways, sizing up Naruto. Your little parlor tricks will do you no good here, ninja. And quat. A low guttural voice spoke. Leopard seemed to want to talk before he fought. My style is unbeatable, especially for a kid such as yourself. Naruto grinned. After enduring lectures from Sasuke and Neji on how inferior he was, this guy's words had absolutely no effect on him. Naruto cracked his neck, then rushed in. He lunged at the man, pulling out a kunai as he ran. Leopard sprang towards him, baring his sharpened teeth and holding his fingers like claws. Naruto threw a punch that was neatly blocked. A slash from Leopard raised Naruto's arm and he swiveled to try a kick. He found his leg caught in midair and he was thrown high up. Leopard jumped up to kick him, but Naruto formed a cage bunshine in midair that pulled him out of the way. Naruto landed a few feet away as Leopard came back down. In that pause in time before Leopard landed and would be able to attack again, Naruto decided he was going to try his idea. He put both hands palm forward, keeping his elbows at his side and drew as much chakra as he could to them. It all happened in a split second. Leopard landed. Naruto pushed his hands forward, trying to force the chakra out of his palms. Leopard looked wide-eyed as something hit him in the midsection. A blast of pure energy had exploded out of Naruto's palms, in the shape of a large, ever-expanding wave. It radiated outwards, moving swiftly out and away from Naruto. He stood there in shock as he saw Leopard flung backwards an impossible distance. But more than that, was that the shockwave didn't slow down. As it hit the stands where spectators and fighters alike were sitting, there was a sharp cracking of stone and splintering of wood. The stands blew up like a stack of toothpicks, debris and dust flying everywhere. Naruto could see some fighters and even a few spectators had leapt clear of the blast, but most hadn't. Naruto fell to his knees, breathing heavily. Okay, too much chakra in that one, and I don't think it took the form of wind like I wanted. Pandemonium reigned for a few minutes as people struggled to free themselves from the broken seating. Naruto sat in the ring, looking worried. He really hoped no one had been hurt. Senji just sat in the good section of the stands and looked thoughtful. Naruto had in one move destroyed a quarter of the stadium. Senji smiled at the thought that his new leader was that powerful, but he frowned when he realized he was that powerful but had no idea how to control it. That blast was clearly not intentional. It was just raw power. Senji made up his mind to ask a friend of his to come help train Naruto. It was a long shot, and the man hated ninja, but it was all he could think of at the moment. The announcer nodded at his staff and walked back to the center of the ring. He looked incredulously at this young man who had so easily, he cleared his throat. Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of this match is Naruto Uzumaki. A great roar of approval and cheering went up from the remaining crowd. Naruto was a bit stunned. People were still climbing out of the ruins, but these people didn't seem to care. I guess it's that kind of place, every man for himself. Also, since we need to clear the area of bystanders, debris and a few bodies probably dot and quat. Naruto shuddered at that. Had he hurt anyone? The matches are suspended for one day. The MC looked down at Naruto. Kid, can you try not to damage any more of my property when we resume? He grinned widely. You're not upset? Naruto asked. Hell no. When people hear about what just happened, I'll have more patrons at the continuation of the Kumite. It's good for business to have insane levels of power and fighting. It's what the people want to see. And quat. He snapped his fingers, and Naruto saw a large guy pick up Leopard and fling him over his shoulder. He walked off to where Naruto knew the infirmary was. Hey Naruto. Senji called out. You hungry? Wow. Senji whistled low. You sure can put those away. And quat. He gestured to the empty bowls of ramen. Naruto smiled as he slurped down his 10th bowl. Well, it's not as good as Ichiraku's, but it's pretty good all the same. And I haven't had ramen in a while. A few patrons in the ramen bar were looking at Naruto and whispering. Senji chuckled. Well, I'd say you've succeeded in making a name for yourself. Every man, woman and child within miles of here now know your name, and that you can single-handedly wipe out an army if you wished. Naruto almost choked. An army? It was just a jutsu that I tried on the spot. It's not exactly. Not exactly what? Senji smiled. Complete? Yeah, I could see that. But damn if it wasn't horribly powerful. Naruto frowned into his bowl of ramen. It wasn't anything like I wanted. I was trying to use wind jutsu. I just wanted a gust of wind to blow him away. Senji laughed aloud. I'd say the effect was the same. But you're right, that wasn't wind. That was pure energy. And quat. With a sigh Senji continued. Listen, I have a friend who knows about ninjutsu arts. He's not a ninja mind you, just a very knowledgeable person. I think we should go talk to him when you're done eating. He could probably point you in the right direction. Naruto's eyes lit up and he tilted the bowl back and drank it all in one gulp. Done. Let's go. We only have one day before the fights start back. Oi! Senji called out. Old man, you still alive in there? Naruto looked on as Senji banged on an old wooden door. A walled-off compound with stone carvings of elephants and strange-looking people with 4 or more arms adorned the pillars around the door. Senji, is that you? A voice from within the compound replied. Senji grinned. Yeah, it's M. Before Naruto could blink the doors were opened and a fist had knocked Senji to his back on the ground. A grizzled old man, with dark tan skin stared down at Senji, a glare on his face, his robes fluttering in the wind. I guess you're still mad about the thing with your daughter. And quat. Senji said from the ground, not trying to get up. Mad? If you were not my brother's student at one time you'd be dead right now. My only daughter. Senji grinned. I guess I'm lucky, if she was here she'd have killed me herself. You certainly picked the wrong woman to leave at the altar. The old man nodded. His face softened and he extended his hand to Senji, to help him up. Even if I do understand the reasons, she's still me daughter. You understand? Senji smiled sadly and nodded. Naruto made a mental note to ask about that exchange later. Naruto, Senji turned to him and smiled. This is Sensei Tenchi Shiritori. Senji turned to Tenchi. Old man, this is Naruto Uzumaki, my new nakama, and the man I've sworn allegiance to for saving my life. Tenchi looked between the two. Sworn allegiances are not to be taken lightly. But neither is a life debt. I hope you honor it properly, Senji. He turned to look at Naruto, sizing him up. So you're Jiraiya's student's son. Naruto's jaw dropped. Senji did a double take. What? Naruto asked. Jiraiya's student. Tenchi nodded. The fourth leader of your village, Minato something or the other. I met him once when he was traveling with Jiraiya. He had to be your age, I guess. You look exactly like him. So unless you are him and have learned an age-defying, death-defying jutsu, you're his son. Naruto rocked back. His mind couldn't process any of this. Tenchi looked at him and seemed to make up his mind about something. Okay, come inside. We will talk away from the prying eyes and ears of the street. Old man, Naruto here needs to learn to control his power. His obliterated a quarter of the stadium today. Senji said with a chuckle. You should have seen it. Tenchi, with his back to them, was making some tea on the stove. The quiet trickle of water from the garden was a sharp contrast to the fighting they had seen just a few hours ago. I didn't need to see it, I felt it. Tenchi turned back and brought the tea tray and rested it down before Naruto and Sanyev. Aw, no sake? Senji groaned. Tenchi squinted and backhanded Senji across the face. Senji flew across the garden and landed underneath a small fountain. No alcohol in my house. Tenchi said calmly. You know that. He turned back to Naruto. So what questions do you have for me? Naruto grasped the teacup in his hands, threatening to shatter it with his grip. He had so many questions. My father was the fourth? Was all he could manage to say. Tenchi cocked his head to the side. So they didn't tell you? Odd. He's a hero no to many around the world. He shrugged. Doesn't matter much though, does it? You are who you are regardless of parentage. Naruto looked up incredulously at him. Doesn't matter? I had a father who was a hero. But then why? Naruto's hand subconsciously touched the seal on his stomach. Why would he do this? Tenchi's eyes grew very serious and he stared at Naruto. With a start his eyes snapped wide. You're that Naruto? The vessel? Naruto nodded ashamed. Tenchi grinned and came at Naruto. Thank you. Every day you save so many lives. It is an honor to have you in my house. Tenchi grasped Naruto and gave him a bear hug, squeezing him tightly. Naruto had never met with this reaction before. Most people were scared of him. You're welcome? But how come? How come I'm not scared? Because I know about the seal and what it does. I know how hard it must be to maintain it, the effort, and the sacrifice you must go through. Not many could handle that responsibility. You are saving the world every day. Countless lives could be lost in a blink of an eye if your prisoner was to escape. Tenchi sighed and looked to where Senji was getting out of the fountain. His father was killed by the demon you know. Naruto looked stricken. He saw a wet smiling Senji approach and was scared. When he found out he would shun him like everyone else, the one friend he had made since leaving Konoha. Senji, this is Uzumaki Naruto of Konoha, the jailer of the demon fox. Tenchi said matter-of-factly. Senji stopped in his tracks and his eyes grew steely. Naruto saw a range of emotion cross his face. Sadness, anger, hurt. He wondered what Senji would say. Naruto, you keep that blasted fox locked up? Senji asked slowly. Naruto nodded, afraid of the outcome of this discussion. Senji looked at him then got down on one knee. He drew out his sword and extended it across his palms at Naruto. The oath I took once is not strong enough. My debt to you will never be repaid. My sword, my life, is yours. I shall protect you for eternity, this life and the next. On my word as a samurai, on my soul, I do swear it. Senji had tears streaming down his face as he spoke. Naruto did not know what to say. Senji got up abruptly and walked off, around the corner of the garden for some privacy. Tenchi looked sadly at him go. I hope you understand how much that boy will do for you now. His parents and baby sister were slaughtered by that fox when he was not more than 5 years old. He survived on pure luck. He hates the demon, but he knows there is no way to kill it. So how can I help you, Naruto? Ask anything of me. Naruto looked into his tea. He forced all the thoughts about the demon, his father and Konoha to the back of his mind. I need to learn what my affinity is, and I want to get stronger. Strong enough to build my own village. A village where no one is persecuted or hated. Where everyone can live together in peace. Tenshi sat down and sipped his tea. You certainly dream big. I can help you with the first part easy enough. That tree over there is fed chakra, or chi, so just pick a leaf and hold it in your hands. It will tell you what your affinity is. Naruto got up and walked towards the oddly pale brown tree, which stood out in the lush garden of greens and flowers. He pulled a leaf off and held it. He turned to show Tenchi. The leaf had split in two. Wind. And Quat. Tenchi said simply. Naruto stared at the leaf. My affinity is wind, and I found a place to live hidden in the clouds, accessible only by wind. The gods might not hate me that much after all. So now you need to understand what wind can do. And Quat. Tenchi rose up and gestured for Naruto to follow him. They walked into his house, and into a large training room. This is a chakra room. The walls cannot be damaged by any form of chakra. The wood is made from that tree you saw outside. So fire, water, wind, it doesn't matter what is directed at the walls, roof or floor, no damage will be done. And Quat. Tenchi walked to a wall and pulled down a sword from a rack of weapons. I don't know how it's taught in Konoha, but in my clan, chi skills are taught with a weapon. And Quat. Tenchi threw the sword for Naruto to grasp. He took one look at how Naruto held the sword and took it back. Nope, clearly not a sword user. And Quat. He turned back to the wall and pulled down some nunchaku, with the same result. Naruto spoke up, but I've never used these before, couldn't I learn? Tenchi did not turn to look at him while he was picking the next weapon. I have no time to teach you to use something you are not born to use. Everyone has one weapon, one style that fits them perfectly. It would be easy, flowing, for you to learn to use that. And Quat. He picked up a wooden staff and threw it at Naruto. Naruto caught it easily and held it at his side. Tenchi squinted his eyes. Okay, you're a bow staff user. Naruto felt the staff in his hand. It did actually feel pretty natural. The hard oak staff was slightly longer than he was, but it felt perfectly balanced in his hands. Tenchi smiled. This makes things easier. The basics of bojutsu is that it's very similar to hand-to-hand combat. So the moves can apply to unarmed as well as armed combat. I've no time to train you on the art, but I can show you how to channel your chakra into wind. The rest is up to you. If you survive the kumite, and I'm more sure of that now than anything else, then you will come here for me to train you in bojutsu for exactly 6 months. Is that clear? Naruto frowned, but nodded. 6 months was a long time to postpone his plans. As if reading his thoughts, Tenchi shook his head. Your goals are admirable, but until you're stronger you cannot attain them. You must see the logic in this. Naruto sighed, and gave in. Tenchi was right. Naruto needed to become strong enough to be cage of his own village. He was nowhere near that level now. By the way, I didn't even ask, where do you want to build this village you dream of? Tenchi asked as he guided Naruto to the center of the dojo. 5 hours later, Naruto still swung the bow. His hands would have blistered already if he didn't have the healing power of the Kyuubi. Tenchi watched him sweat and work. So Naruto had found Livingston and the island in the sky. Tenchi had met the man once and liked him. A sincere human being. A faith in a place that no one else believed in. Tenchi had much to think about as Naruto built up the chakra in his staff and swung it, releasing a burst of wind. Senji sat in a corner and watched on in satisfaction, proud of his association with Naruto. Chapter 3, Wind. Naruto and Senji took their seats in the stands allocated for the fighters. The previous day no one had paid Naruto any attention. Today was a different day. All eyes were on his, some angry, some curious, others delighted. It was the delighted ones that worried Naruto. He saw the face of one particular fighter whose eyes were locked on his mouth open in a feral grin, salivating. That one seemed to be trembling with excitement at the thought of fighting Naruto. Naruto swallowed, hard. It was the reigning champ who was staring at him. They sat down and looked around the stadium. The master of ceremonies had been right. Far from being emptier, the stadium was more packed. Every seat was filled, and the area where Naruto destroyed the day before had been replaced with makeshift bleachers that strained under the weight of hundreds of people. Ladies and gentlemen, we continue the kumite. The MC screamed, to the delight of the fans. Naruto held tightly onto the bow staff in his right hand, base resting just on the outside of his right foot. He tried his best to remain calm, but this was just too exciting. He had a new technique to try out in actual combat. Naruto couldn't wait. If this worked, he'd be on his way to getting stronger, strong enough to fulfill his dream. 2 hours later, Naruto versus Victor Karas. The MC shouted. The crowd was immediately in an uproar. Many people had come hoping to catch a glimpse of the power they had heard about or seen already yesterday. Naruto's opponent walked into the middle of the arena, and waited. Naruto sighed, and clenched his fist around the bow staff. He rose and bent his knees. He sprang from the bleachers into his starting position in the middle of the field. A small circle of dust surrounded him. Naruto held onto his bow, pointing straight up and resting on the ground next to him like a pole. He breathed in and out deeply, preparing his chakra. Fight! The MC shouted, then ran off the field, clearly not wanting to get caught in any kind of backlash. Victor Karas was a middle-aged man with scars over most of his body. He had clearly seen years of battle. He sneered at Naruto. "What you going to do with that stick, boy?" He drew a sword from his waist. "I'm going to slice that toothpick, then peel the skin off your bones." Naruto smiled. At least he didn't have to worry about hurting a good guy. He lifted the bow and held it across his body, palms extended. Victor charged at him, but Naruto wasn't playing. He wanted to use this move immediately, couldn't hold the chakra buildup in anymore. He brought his foot forward and pushed his right hand forward quickly, flicking the bow towards Victor. Victor Karas, even though he was still a good 20 feet away from Naruto, felt as if someone had hit a sledgehammer into his side. He went sprawling into the sand. He got up and spit out a bloody tooth. He grinned. "Is that the best you got?" He laughed. Naruto looked puzzled and smiled. "No, I was just getting into position. And quat." Victor stopped laughing. The crowd was deathly silent, waiting. Naruto gathered his chakra and exhaled, feeding it into his hands, and then the bow. He raised it and jumped forward, landing in a crouch. Naruto brought the bow down in a sharp swing, slamming the end into the dirt. "Kenshi Sudaraiku," he shouted. An arc of wind followed the path of the bow, shooting like a shark's fin along the ground unbelievably fast towards Victor Karas. He had no time to jump out of the way. The wind hit him full on and he stood there taking it at first. The wind shredded his clothes, flung his hair back and spread-eagled his arms. He screamed into the maelstrom as his grip on the ground couldn't hold anymore and he was flung backwards. He hit the wall of the stadium and the wind kept battering him. There was a sharp crack and a huge gully was etched into the stone wall of the stadium where the wind hit it. In a matter of seconds, it was over. Victor Karas fell in a heap to the ground. The section of the stadium that was hit creaked loudly, then split in two, the left half sliding sideways slightly. Naruto stood up and grinned. It had worked perfectly. He could hear Senji shouting from the stands. "That's right. That's how we do it. Woohoo! Go Naruto!" The stadium erupted in applause. "Winner, Naruto!" As Naruto took his seat next to a smiling Senji, he saw several people approach them. Senji stopped them with his eyes and put out his palm. They nodded at him and one by one, pieces of paper were slipped into his hand. They then turned and left. Naruto looked at him puzzled, and he whispered in response. "Jobs. You've proven yourself more than enough to get the interest of several people who want jobs done. So we go through their requests and see what you want to do." Naruto looked excited. "But I thought I had to win for people to notice?" Senji laughed. "Naruto, in 2 strokes you destroyed your opponent, and cut the stadium in half. I think people will notice you. People far and wide will notice you."
Naruto's eyes glazed over for a second, a million thoughts going through his head.
Would Konoha find out? Would they be proud or would they hunt him down? Would his friends even care? Senji's next fight was against a fellow swordsman. It was a majestic sight, more like a dance than anything else. His opponent's face was mostly covered except for his eyes, a long red scarf flowing behind him as their swords clashed in the sunlight. Senji's black suit was looking the worse for wear as the fight wore on, slices appearing in the material. Of course his opponent had them as well, with small cuts and drops of blood for good measure. After 15 minutes of this, the MC's voice cut in. 15 minutes. Would the combatants like the option of Anshitsu? The 2 swordsmen stopped and stepped away from each other. They both nodded. In a flash, the scarfed opponent had pushed his scarf up over his eyes, tying it tightly. Senji had pulled out a kerchief and did the same, effectively blinding himself. Naruto's mouth dropped open. What was he doing? But he could see Senji's feral grin as he grasped his swords tightly and crouched. Anshitsu means dark room, so they'd be fighting blind, Naruto guessed. The crowd became hushed to the point where you could hear the gravel shifting under the fighters' feet. Senji and his opponent, Murasaki, something Naruto remembered, slowly circled each other. In a flash, they rushed each other, and like before the swords clashed, the ringing of cold steel sending shivers down Naruto's spine. It took a few more minutes, but Naruto could see Senji was getting the upper hand. The cuts on his opponent were getting bigger, while Murasaki was scoring less hits on Senji. There was a quick series of clashes, then it was over. Murasaki had leapt back several feet, clutching his left arm. Blood oozed between his fingers from where Senji's sword had slashed him. Senji stood back and smiled contentedly. Murasaki raised his hand and gave a signal to the MC. He had forfeited. Winner, Senji the Darkblade. Naruto grinned. His friend had a very cool nickname. He watched as Senji walked over to the MC and spoke to him. The MC nodded and spoke again. Due to damage inflicted in this match, fighter Senji will not continue in the Kumite. And quat. The crowd seemed slightly disappointed. Senji walked over to where Naruto was and sat down. Naruto turned on him. Why did you drop out? You were winning every match. Senji turned to look at him with a tired smile. Well, I don't know if you noticed, but there are only 4 of us left, which means I'd have to fight you in a few minutes. I could probably hold my own for a while, but I really don't want to be on the receiving end of your wind strike. We've got several jobs lined up and I need to recover if we want to do them. Naruto nodded. His friend was very practical. That was good, Naruto thought, because I'm very impulsive. Would my unpredictability slow me down in being a good leader? From starting my own village? Naruto shook his head. Now was not the time for such thoughts. With Senji out of the fight that just left the reigning champ Guerrera and his opponent, a small man who used a weird animal-style martial art that Naruto had seen before, but not to this extent. Naruto had only one word to describe the match. Brutal. Guerrera was the fastest person Naruto had ever seen. Despite his huge size, he practically rammed into his opponent. As the man was about to fall backwards though, Guerrera had grabbed his arms and thrown him into the air. He had then leapt into the air and somehow gotten the man's arms behind his back, and his legs hooked. They came crashing down to earth, the small man underneath pushing Guerrera. They landed with a sickening crunch. The masked champion got up and walked away, not even looking back. Winner Guerrera. The MC articulated. We will break for 5 minutes, then the final match will begin. Naruto vs Guerrera. Naruto felt the nervous energy build up inside him. He'd soon be fighting for his life against a much stronger opponent. He smiled and turned to a similarly smiling Senji. I feel so alive right now. Senji nodded at his friend, leader, and kindred spirit. Naruto stood in the middle of the arena, looking at how huge Guerrera was. His hand tightened on his bow staff. Fight! No sooner had the MC shouted those words and moved out of the way had Guerrera catapulted his huge mass towards Naruto. Honestly, if Naruto hadn't been expecting it, he would have been bowled over. Unfortunately for Guerrera, he had been expecting it, so all Guerrera hit was a shadow clone. It vanished in a puff of smoke. 4 Narutos erupted from the ground around where Guerrera stood. Guerrera growled and brought his hands together with a loud clap. Naruto's eyes bulged as he saw familiar signs being formed, although with slight differences. Lion, bear, boar, was that an ox? With a grunt, Guerrera doubled in size. He went from a towering 7 feet tall to a massive 14-foot giant. His muscles seemed to take on a harder quality. Naruto's eyes squinted. The man looked slightly armored at this point. He could see why he was feared. The 4 Naruto clones took their position and raised their staffs. As one they all performed the same move as before. Tenshikage, they shouted in unison. 4 staffs slamming into the ground. 4 arcs of air racing to Guerrera. The masked fighter jumped impossibly high, straight up. He avoided all 4 blasts and landed back where he began. The Narutos frowned and prepared for another move, when Guerrera blasted his way towards one of them. With the smash of a giant fist, one clone dissipated. Naruto began the move for another Tenshikage, but before he could take the first step, the other 3 clones were destroyed and Guerrera was behind him. You move too slowly, young one. And quat. Naruto swing the bow, but too late. He was backhanded across the face. Naruto spun madly around a few times before landing in a heap not far away. He blinked his eyes open, thinking he'd never felt a punch like that before. He looked around. His bow was by the feet of Guerrera. With a smirk, the fighter stepped on it and smashed it in 2. Naruto stood up slowly, his face becoming a mask of rage. That bow was a gift. And quat. Anyone looking closely would have seen his pupils become slits and his whiskers become deeper. What everyone did notice, however, was the waves of killing intent rolling off of Naruto. The spectators became silent as the anger became palpable. Even Kenji shuddered at the foul feeling he could practically taste coming from Naruto. Guerrera felt it too, and a smile split his face. Finally, you're getting serious. Come, little one, show me what you can do. Naruto growled and charged his speed much faster than before. A white blur closed the distance between the two. Guerrera's eyes opened wider behind his mask. Naruto's punch connected with his gut, the force of the charge, plus his QB-enhanced chakra sending Guerrera flying. Before he could land, Naruto was under him on all fours. With a growl, Naruto kicked him skyward. He leapt upwards to catch Guerrera in mid-air. In a blink of an eye though, the masked fighter had twisted and grabbed Naruto in a body lock. It felt like a vice to Naruto, who struggled to break free. Foolish. Grappling is my art. I hope you survive this. You fought well. Guerrera twisted Naruto and himself so that he was in a sitting position in mid-air and Naruto's head was between his legs. They began to spin madly as they plummeted towards earth. Naruto panicked. This felt very much like Lee's lotus, and he didn't want to feel that impact. He struggled against the hard muscles of Guerrera, his QB chakra pushing his body its limit. He started to feel his grip loosening, but too late. Wish a crash. Guerrera planted Naruto head first into the ground below. There was a collective wince from the crowd. followed by rousing cheers and jeers for the reigning champion. The MC walked over to where Naruto lay and Guerrera stood over him. Naruto was out cold, a small trickle of blood running down his nose. He was still breathing though, so the MC nodded at Guerrera. Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of this kumite, Guerrera. The crowd roared its approval while Senji rushed out to the middle of the arena to collect Naruto. 1 month later Jiraiya drank his sake quietly at the end of the bar. His expression kept most people away from him. The one or two who had ventured close enough to bother him had felt the brunt of his bad mood. He had seen nor heard no trace of Naruto for months. He had left Konoha so far behind that most people in these areas had never even heard of the Fire Country. Jiraiya had no more interest in the loose women he had before, no more time for frivolities. Life had lost its taste and bitterness had taken hold. His charge, the only living relative of his student, the boy he had begun to train, had been run out of his home. Jiraiya scowled. If only he could find him, he could take care of him, raise him properly. That Naruto sure was powerful though, those wind attacks were really something. Jiraiya almost choked on his sake as bits of conversation from down the bar floated towards him. Yay, too bad he had to face that giant Guerrera in the finals. I think he would have won against anyone else. And quat. One of the two men talking replied. Jiraiya moved towards them unnoticed. No one can defeat Guerrera. It's impossible. That kid though sure was something. I'd hate to go up against him in a fight myself. Jiraiya stood behind both men and clamped his hands down on the back of their necks. A genuine smile crossed his face. His first clue. Gentlemen, I believe we should have a talk over some sake. Naruto eyed the small stone flying through the air, his eyes narrowing to slits to focus on it. Kaze Senbone, he said as he sent a single needle of wind racing towards the stone. Not for the first time, he missed completely. Tenshi looked on with severe disapproval on his face. You must focus on the object harder, Naruto. Finesse comes with much practice. Naruto scowled. I've never thrown a real senbone before, so how am I supposed to throw a wind one? I've only ever thrown kanhai. Tenshi looked down at Naruto and shook his head. Naruto, you relied too much on your staff in your match with Guerrera. What if you are disarmed? You need to be able to create your own weapons with your hands and wind chakra. The easiest one to start with is senbone. If you can't even make this work, we can go no further. And quat. With that he turned and walked away from Naruto, leaving him looking at his new sensei's back. Naruto walked over to the pile of rocks and picked up a handful. He threw them in the air and formed the wind needles and threw them again. Missed. Again. Jiraiya looked on from the shadows as Naruto tried again to hit the stones. His face was serious as he considered several options. Naruto had found a new teacher. Granted the man was not a shinobi, but he could not have found a better substitute. It has been long since you graced my house, Senin. And quat. Tenshi stepped out of the shadows behind Jiraiya. Jiraiya did not turn around. How is he doing, Tenshi? He asked with genuine concern in his voice. He watched Naruto struggling with the senbone, determination in his eyes. Tenshi rubbed his chin and sighed. He's a brave young man. He has a lot of heart, Jiraiya, and he has a goal. He fights and strives to reach the goal. I think he will go very far. Jiraiya shook his head. You know what I meant. He's at a crossroads. He could go either way. Who he becomes will depend greatly on the 6 months, I think. I would like to be involved in his training. And quat. Jiraiya spoke up. There are some jutsu of Minato's he should learn, as his birthright. Tenshi nodded. Whenever you are ready to introduce yourself, do it. But I'd rather you wait until he finishes his exercises for today. I think he's finally starting to focus. They watched as Naruto hit 3 stones with wind needles, splintering them into dust. He let out a whoop and jumped around celebrating. Jiraiya smiled sadly. So much spirit for someone banished from his home, so much heart. Sakura stared at the gates of Konoha. Everyone else thought Tsunade had left weeks ago, but there she was, her duffel bag slung over her shoulder, Shizune walking behind her. They had disappeared, but clearly hadn't left as yet. On an impulse, Sakura ran towards her. Tsunade had come because of Naruto, she shouted at herself in her head. She too believed in him. Mistress Tsunade, please wait, Sakura shouted as she ran up to them. Tsunade turned to face her, her face softening as she looked at Sakura. She knew Naruto had a crush on this girl, that they had been friends and teammates. She cursed inwardly though, if only she had left weeks ago, but she needed the research papers she had found, and some items she wanted that were hidden away, if she ever saw Naruto again. Sakura? She asked with just that name. Tsunade, I have a request, please. Sakura's eyes welled up with tears. She closed them hard and sought the courage. Please, take me with you. Tsunade rocked back on her heels with surprise. What? Why would you want to come with me? Sakura sobbed. I'm weak. I've lost 2 teammates, 2 friends. And quat. She sniffled, then rose her head resolutely and looked Tsunade right in her eyes. I will find them. I will save them. I need to get stronger, and only you can show me how. Tsunade stared dumbfounded at Sakura. She had no intention of going to look for Naruto, she was just going to her secluded hideaway house for a while until Jiraiya found the boy. No real plan, certainly not being a sensei to anyone. But Sakura's plea reminded her so much of her own state after Orochimaru betrayed them, and Jiraiya went off hunting for him. In fact, it was like looking in a funhouse mirror and seeing yourself decades younger. Her mind processed it for a full minute before she turned her back on Sakura. I'm walking east, I hope you can pack fast and catch up to me soon, apprentice. I will not wait for you. And quat. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed part 1 to the new series called Tenshikage, aka, What If Naruto Built His Own Village? Anyways, I hope all of you guys have a wonderful day/night, bye.